instance, my client, Mohammed Zubair, he has suffered 23 days of incarceration and police remand. Why should he suffer? That is the question that we must ask. Why even 1 day of custody? Supposing there is a caste atrocity somewhere, and I call out the people who have attacked the Dalits, will that be creating public unrest? Who created the public unrest? The persons who attacked, who committed the caste atrocity, not the person who calls out.
After a grand total of 23 days, Mohammed Zubair, fact checker and co-founder of Alt News, was let out on bail from the Tihar jail in New Delhi on the directions of the Supreme Court on 20th of July. Joining me right now is renowned advocate Vrinda, who represented Zubair in the judicial proceedings that eventually led to his release. Thank you so much for joining us, Vrinda. My first question to you is, after so many days of judicial back and forth, of all the procedures, of the multitude of cases against him, did you expect for this to happen? Did you expect this verdict?
I actually did. And that is why very quickly we approached the Supreme Court in an Article 32 petition. Article 32 writ petitions and the power, the inherent and extraordinary power that the Honorable Supreme Court has under the Constitution under Article 142 are really like the lifeline on which citizens' freedom and liberty lives. It is the Brahmastra that the Supreme Court deploys when the court sees that clearly there is a way in which the state or its agents are trying to throttle civil liberties and freedoms. And yes, I did approach the Supreme Court with confidence that the Supreme Court will ensure freedom, because my client, Mohammed Zubair, has not committed any offense whatsoever. He simply exercises the rights and freedoms given to him under the Indian Constitution as a free citizen. That's all.
How since Zubair's arrest, we have seen how various arms of justice have operated. The minute he gets bail in one case, he is then another lower court then sends out a warrant to arrest him in another one. In fact, D.Y. Chandrachud, who led the bench, he also commented on this, and I quote, "Contents of all FIRs seem to be similar. What seems to be happening is, as he gets bail in one case, he's remanded in another. This vicious cycle is continuing," unquote. Do you think then, at the end of the day, this verdict is also a message to the lower courts to be more prudent in the issuing of their warrants, but also more generous in issuing their bails, which isn't what has been happening increasingly?
Absolutely. I think this verdict and earlier verdicts also of the Supreme Court are actually speaking to the subordinate judiciary as well as to the police. To the subordinate judiciary, it is saying that you are the first line of defense of civil liberties. So when someone is produced before you, simply because the police ask for remand, the remand is not for asking, the detention and custody is not for asking. You must scrutinize if prima facie case is made out. And if it is not made out, enlarge a person on bail. The courts, the subordinate judiciary, has full authority and power under our Code of Criminal Procedure to enlarge persons on bail in cases of this nature where the sentence is extremely low, maximum up to 3 years. The penalty can even be only fine. And yet we see the subordinate judiciary across, in this particular case, the metropolitan magistrates or the judicial magistrates of Uttar Pradesh. Finally, of course, he was given bail by the additional sessions judge of Patiala House Court. We see the subordinate judiciary rejecting bail applications, whereas prima facie, no case is being made out. And it's not just in this verdict. I recall the Arnab Goswami verdict, where Justice Chandrachud had implored the subordinate district judiciary to ensure that bail is granted where it is deserved. And yet we see there is hesitance, there is reluctance. And clearly it is time for the Supreme Court to not only say this in judgments, but also to set down clear guidelines. Because otherwise, judgments like Arnesh Kumar, recent judgment of Satinder Antil, saying bail is the rule, jail is an exception, which has been consistently said, those actually can't be enforced. We are not enjoying those the jurisprudence that the Supreme Court is laying down. I think very clear guidelines have to be laid down for the district judiciary to grant bail where it is deserved and to ensure that freedom and personal liberty must remain sacred and must be restrained only in extraordinary circumstances. And if the state, through the police or any other law enforcement agency, is going to abuse its power, the statutory power of investigation, the district judiciary must curb that. For instance, my client, Mohammed Zubair, he has suffered 23 days of incarceration and police remand. Why should he suffer? That is the question that we must ask. Why even 1 day of custody?
And we saw during the hearing, the UP government try to get a gag order against Zubair, saying that, look, at least allow him to not tweet anymore. Of course, that's, the judiciary immediately shut that down. But the critics of Mohammed Zubair and the likes would often argue that what they consider Zubair's journalism to be doing is hate speech. And this is a tightrope that India has traditionally walked, right? Like, how much speech do you allow before it is considered hate speech? Now, you and I might disagree that this is hate speech, but just generally speaking, if a critic of Mohammed Zubair is watching this, or his journalism is disliked by some people, what would you say to them?
Mohammed Zubair has not crossed the line where you fall foul of the law and incite hatred, ill will, create public disorder. None of those have been crossed in a single tweet or social media, Facebook post, etc., by Mohammed Zubair. And I say that with some responsibility, having scrutinized the material. Of course, it is eventually for the honorable courts to determine whether the argument that I advance, whether it is acceptable or not. However, there is a deliberate attempt being made to create a confusion in the public mind. When any citizen, forget Mohammed Zubair for a moment, any citizen of India, or any person for that matter, calls out misinformation, disinformation, false propaganda, that is the exercise of a fundamental duty of a citizen of an independent country. How does democracy function? It functions on the basis of all of us who exercise our right to vote, forming an opinion. That is the basis of democracy. And it is for that reason that the press, and today the press does not obviously is not only the print media. I think the fact checker is very much an important foot soldier of Indian democracy today. And we see all of us form our opinion. What is how would I want my country to be? What is the nature of this republic? Which political parties manifesto do I agree with? How do we make that opinion? On the basis of information that is circulating. Information is not circulating only through the newspaper today. It is circulating on social media, on digital media, and I assume on WhatsApp in a very, very big way. That information must be accurate, it must be authentic, it must be truthful. And that's the role of a fact checker, and any citizen should play that role, provided it is accurate. We know that there is a lot of misinformation. This misinformation is not incidental. It is not accidental. It is part of strategies to disinform and manipulate the minds and views and opinions of Indian citizens. And it must be called out. That is one role that I think a fact checker plays. Secondly, if there is someone who is being abusive or calling for violence against, and we know that there have been calls for sexual violence against Muslim women repeatedly, not once, by many different persons. Calling that out is imperative, and again, I would say, is a duty. I would call that out. I would call it out as violence of speech that is unacceptable, it is illegal, must be proscribed. That speech has to be halted. Calling out that speech, I cannot be held because that person may enjoy political patronage, that person may enjoy, unfortunately, a large following in some local area. It doesn't mean that person can get away with impunity, breaking the law. Supposing there is a caste atrocity somewhere, and I call out the people who have attacked the Dalits, will that be creating public unrest? Who created the public unrest? The persons who attacked, who committed the caste atrocity, not the person who calls out.
So I was going through social media minutes after the verdict came out, and I saw some people immediately began targeting Justice D.Y. Chandrachud. In fact, digging up information about him, his family. This is something we've repeatedly seen, even in the Nupur Sharma case that happened. So much so that Justice Pardiwala had to come out and say that, look, verdicts are not dictated by social media trials, and they shouldn't be affecting us or commenting on us directly. This is something that will set a very bad precedent. Do you think these kind of attacks, these kind of ad hominem attacks directly against the Supreme Court judges, against the judiciary, can unfortunately in the future, or even now in some sense, affect the verdicts that come out? Do you think it will set all sorts of wrong precedents?
Not at all. I don't think the Indian judiciary is going to tailor or change its verdicts at the Supreme Court because some trolls, misinformed, bigoted, completely unfounded, baseless information and make these kind of allegations. I don't think the Indian Supreme Court or the honorable judges are in any way going to change their verdict. Their verdicts are based on law and evidence here. It is very unfortunate if, in any matter, in any case, there will be one side that whose arguments will be upheld and contentions will be upheld, and then other side whose the court does not see fit to uphold. Now, if that unleashes each time without basis, I am not saying that the Supreme Court judgments cannot be criticized. Supreme Court judgments can be criticized. The Supreme Court itself has reflected upon its own judgments in the past, remarked on them, and said that, perhaps this should have been interpreted differently. Civil society must comment and critique certain judgments in order to advance jurisprudence, in order to take forward concerns of liberty and freedom. And that is how jurisprudence evolves. However, to make make all manner of allegations very personalized, politicized allegations, it does not, to my mind, either does not. After all, we need, not just need. I think it is the most important and central institution today in our democracy are the courts, the judiciary, particularly the higher judiciary. To make these kind of personalized, politicized, completely unfounded remarks on social media are very unfortunate.